From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest. This is Dale Carter's America.
And we're back on the podcast, delayed by a day in terms of recording it. Will it delay when it posts?
No,
okay.
Same day.
So then it doesn't matter.
It actually makes us more relevant because we're one day closer to what we're actually talking about.
So then why the hell did I bring it up? I have no idea.
We're off to a great start.
We are off to a great start, and we thank our friend Bob Watson for being part of the podcast. State Farm agent for 5 decades. He's at 7th and Main in Blue Springs, 816-229-7878. Auto, home, life, commercial insurance. He's my guy, and at the very least, give him a call if you want a rate comparison. I had a friend of mine who has a dog like I do. We have 2 now at our house. And she said, you mentioned something about health insurance for pets. And Bob he can get you a rate quote on that. So if you've got pets, and trust me, they're going to go through some health issues. And if you wanted to buy stock in something, you should buy stock in like veterinary medicine because they charge through the roof.
Yeah.
Insurance might help you with that. And Bob Watson can help you with a quote on that at 816-229-7878, licensed in both Missouri and Kansas. I was away for the weekend, which is why we delayed for a day, at the birthday party for my grandson, Maverick, who turns 6 years old.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
I was also gone yesterday, so it works out.
You know, and I got to hang out with my family, my sons, and my nephew, Jeremy. In fact, Jeremy, if you're watching this and you should watch, right? You should watch on YouTube and Rumble. You can also get the audio version everywhere you get a podcast. But see, if you're not watching, you're missing this. He gave me this button. My nephew, Jeremy, said a customer of his, he owns a transmission shop. He said a customer of his gave it to him. It's a Rush Limbaugh button from 84 WHAS. And my wife said, that doesn't even look like Rush. That was Rush back in his fat days.
Oh, yeah.
You gonna hold that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeremy said, the only person I can think of who would get something out of this is you. So there you go. Rush Limbaugh remembered here on Dale Carter's America, the podcast. Help us spread the word. Talk to people that you know who are like-minded, and let's get the dialogue going, the conversation going, because, Kurt, I'm really worried about this election, and we're going to get into a lot of that on the podcast here. I'm worried about it. I'm worried that we have become so tribal that there's a faction out there that says, I'm going to vote Democrat. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. And when you ask them why, they don't really have an answer. And there's even a faction out there that says they're going to vote Republican no matter what. I mean, what I want to have is a real dialogue about what these people stand for and what they're going to do for you. Because honest to God, if you ask somebody, why are you going to vote for Joe Biden? What has he done to make America better? You know, since Donald Trump left. The border, crime, taxes, all that stuff, the environment, gasoline, any of it, any better. And you know what a lot of them answer? Well, Trump's an asshole. Okay, but how has Biden made your life better? That's what we're going to get into. First, before we get into any of the political stuff and the nut house that we're living in on that, how about what's going on here in Kansas City? And that is the aftermath of what happened at the party for what should have been a celebration of this town, back-to-back Super Bowl championships. And you know there was gunfire. You know that someone was killed, Lisa Lopez Galvin. She was a radio personality at KKFI, and all of the stations in town, all 23 radio stations, there's more than that, but 23 players in Kansas City have gotten together to help raise money for her family because you can't bring her back.
Yeah.
But what we can do is let our dollars speak for us and help her out, help the family out there because she left behind 2 children and a loving family, and I didn't know her. Did you know her?
Nope, but I have people in my circles that knew her, fellow band members that worked with her closely. She came to she was a big supporter of live music, apparently. So that's also tough to hear. But
and I understand, she was shot wearing a Harrison Butker jersey.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yep.
And the family was able to reach out to Harrison, and Harrison, a devout Catholic too, by the way. He got the family a jersey, so that they could remember her. It's just a terrible and tragic situation. But again, your dollars can help. We put up the GoFundMe information. I think that's also on our social too, right?
Yes.
We can join the 23 radio stations with the strength of our podcast to help remember Lisa Lopez Galvin. Now, well, on the other side of it, did you see this? The New York Post caught this before it was taken down. But one of the thugs who pulled the trigger had a GoFundMe page set up.
Yeah, it was initially the Daily Beast that ran the story, and then New York Post picked up on it, and a few other people. And I think it was the mother of one of the minors, because there was... No, I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't the minor. It was one of the adults, but one of the family members of one of the adult shooters put up a GoFundMe page because they were also shot, I think, in the face or something like that.
Right.
And, Lindell Mays of Raytown, not doing my my hometown any favors.
No,
there.
not at all.
And his mother put up a GoFundMe asking for help with his medical bills. Quote, during this tragic time, he's in ICU fighting for a recovery from several surgeries, from going to the Chiefs Super Bowl parade with his older sister. That's one way to put it.
That is one way to put it. The other way to put it is a bunch of thugs had a disagreement and of course, solved it the way that thugs do, and that's by taking out their guns and shooting at each other.
Did he go to the Super Bowl parade, or did he shoot at a bunch of people at the Super Bowl parade?
Well, he was there, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was there, but then he also opened fire on a crowd.
So you got GoFundMe for Lisa Lopez's family, and
that one was taken down. Just to be clear, that second GoFundMe was taken down.
So we should have a different kind of FundMe called NoFundMe.
Yeah,
I want a NoFundMe page for the thug who created the violence there at what should have been a celebration.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. We had Phil Lavoda on with us last week, and then one of my favorite listeners who lives in the state of Oklahoma, listens online to KFKF, and also is starting to listen to the podcast as well. Both of them said something, and honestly, when Phil said it, it kind of hit me, and you were off mic when we were doing the interview, so you would have jumped in on this, and when she sent me a note, I jumped on it, because both of them said something that is wrong. They said, no one should have an AK-47. Who has an AK-47? It's already illegal. An AK-47 is an automatic rifle, right? Used by the Russians.
Yeah. I'm not as familiar with the AK platform. I know that there's a lot of AK-47 clones that are civilian use that are semi-automatic. Usually they're called something else. So I think a true AK-47 is automatic. But I'm not entirely clear on that.
Okay. With very few exceptions, an automatic weapon is illegal to begin with, right?
Yeah. It has to either be older than a certain year, and basically at that point it counts as like a collector's item, because it's like you can buy a Tommy gun, for example, I think in some cases, but they're like exorbitantly expensive and not really practical. Or you have to have a Class 3 permit in order to get one. So there's a bunch of laws that all stem from the National Firearms Act that control all that stuff. But yeah, you can't just go out and buy an automatic AK. That's not.
And in all honesty, anybody who can afford a classic Tommy gun is not one of the people that we're talking about from this celebration.
Right.
And you're talking about modified weapons that are already illegal. I mean, we go down this path all the time. They're already illegal. And, the other side throws out a word, and we've said this before, that I'm not really a gun guy, but I know that there's a difference between automatic and semi-automatic.
Right.
And most of these guns, in fact, I think the guns that were used at the celebration were all semi-automatic, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure on the latest data on this, but I think something like 80+% of firearms in America now are semi-automatic, because you're talking about handguns, which are one of the most popular forms of firearms, which are mostly semi-automatic. I mean, you have revolvers, but most people don't carry around a revolver with them. Even the cops don't do that anymore. And then you have rifles, which are mostly semi-automatic. and then also semi-automatic shotguns and things like that. So.
And then there's cosmetic stuff, right? Like the ARs, that's all cosmetic, and we've talked about this. I can't tell you how many times the bullet doesn't go any faster out of something that's cosmetically resembling some sort of military gun.
Right.
Doesn't go any faster, doesn't kill any differently. And I'm going to dumb this down for people like me. Semi-automatic, you have gun, you pull trigger, bang. You pull trigger, bang.
Right.
Yeah, right? That's
and
it.
It's self-loading. So when you pull the trigger, it ejects the round and the bolt brings a new round up into the chamber.
Pull trigger, bang. Now, automatic is ba 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 when you pull the trigger.
Yeah, but you just hold
it down. I'm sorry. Ba 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 ba. I keep forgetting I'm on camera. Ba 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 ba. That's the difference.
Right.
And with few exceptions, those are already illegal.
Right. And I mean, trust me, I would love to have a full auto AK. That would be sick, but I can't just go out and buy one, All
right.
For better or worse, you can't do that.
Has anything else popped up on this in the last week? I've been traveling. What have you heard? Anything?
Well, I mean, I think last week we talked about the new arrests that were made. There was the 2 adults that were arrested in addition to the 2 juveniles. I think one of them admitted to opening fire first, but essentially what this picture is kind of, the picture that's taking shape is that somebody got into a verbal altercation and there was a bunch of guys kind of in close proximity, at least these 4 people. And one guy, got into a beef, pulled out a gun, started shooting, and everyone just, pulls him out and just starts shooting randomly, and it's you
Terrible.
can't do that.
Yeah. They broke a bunch of laws too, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. Shooting people is illegal.
Are they out on the street yet? I mean, with Gene Peters Baker, would you be shocked?
I don't believe so. I think it's probably going to be hard, as much as
Spotlight.
The county prosecutor might want to, get these people out or lessen their sentences or lessen the charges. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of eyes on this case, so it's probably going to be a little bit harder to do that with this one.
Meanwhile, next week on the podcast, Becky Nace is going to be with us. I love Becky. She lives in Blue Springs now, but she's a longtime Kansas City resident. She was on the city council in Kansas City. She has a lot of insight into the Royals and wanting to move to the Crossroads District with their stadium. I got into it with somebody on Facebook. One of these days I'm going to learn, it takes 2 to fight. I learned that in marriage counseling. And if you go away and don't fight, there is no fight. But I was on somebody else's post and I said, I'm a hard no on this. And some guy who's obviously really wants to move the Royals to the Crossroads is just in my face. How irresponsible of you to be a hard no, blah, 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 blah. You have no vision, blah, 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 blah. In the late 60s, they had a lot of vision for setting up a sports complex in the old Leeds area on the east side. And guess what? It's worked for 50 years plus.
Yeah.
But now they want to go back to where they were. And, one of my big concerns, especially now in light of what happened at the Super Bowl celebration, they had 800 uniformed officers there to protect. 800! Nearly 1,000 folks in uniform carrying weapons, and this melee still happened.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine 81 home dates at the all-new, whatever they're going to call it, maybe they'll still call it Kauffman Stadium, I don't know, 81 dates, most of them at night, in the summer, in that area.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I was talking, I had some family in town over the weekend, and we were talking about it a little bit. And one thing that came up that I hadn't thought of before, because my family's from Philly, and in Philly it's very similar, where the stadiums are separated from downtown. They're in South Philly. One of the differences that they have there is they do have a subway, so you get right on the subway and it takes you down Broad Street to South Philly. But they have built like a whole area around there, and a lot of cities have done that, where they have the kind of stadium area and then they build it up. They put restaurants there, they put bars there, they put entertainment centers, expanded parking, things like that. I don't see why we couldn't do that in Kansas City, if we wanted to. Like in Philly, they have something that's very similar to like Power and Light District or the KC Live Block, but it's right at the stadiums. It's like in the parking lot. They have a bunch of big screen TVs and different venues, in there. I think they have the PBR in there. So, like, why can't we do that? Why do we have to move the whole damn stadium? You know, there's nothing wrong with it.
And the footprint there could be expanded. We're going to talk to Becky Nace about all that. But one of the things I like about it, and the argument I made on this other person's Facebook page, was you essentially at Truman Sports Complex have a gated community. You know, It's pretty tough. I mean, you could, but it's pretty tough to get in there unless you're there for a game, you know, to park in the parking lot or whatever, because it's gated. So we don't have that in the Crossroads District. A lot of businesses are going to be put out of business by this. I mean, it's just there are a lot of extensions to it. And now the Chiefs are getting on board. You've seen this, right? The Chiefs are going to come with blueprints of a reimagined Arrowhead in support of that tax. They're coming off back-to-back Super Bowl championships. I'm still going to be a no on that because I think there needs to be more of a discussion about it. But the Chiefs may well carry the day.
Yeah, I mean that's only a matter of time before the Chiefs try and hop on board too, right?
Yeah, well, they're going to reveal it. By the time this thing airs, they're going to reveal their look at what it's going to look at.
Great.
Yeah, the look of your house could be drastically changed with a new roof for the better. My friends at Royal Roofing and Solar want to help you like they help me. I have a beautiful roof. Every time I drive home, I drive into the driveway and I look up at that roof and I say, Austin, man, that is a masterpiece. I love, because I had a hideously ugly roof, right? It was the old shake shingle roof, and by HOA rule, I had to have a shake shingle roof. And then they finally did away with that. So my new roof is one that's going to be the last roof that probably ever goes on that house, at least while I'm living. Royal Roofing and Solar. If it's springtime, it's time to at least get a quote. Call Austin, have his team come out. If this is your forever home, you know, with all the rates going up with Evergy and all that, turn your house into its own energy generator. And you'll thank me for that. When the storms come through and the power gets knocked out, your house will still have lights. Royal by Solar.
Solar by Royal. Solar by Royal.
Solar by Royal. Okay, fine. I knew I did that wrong. SolarByRoyal.com, RoyalContractingKC.com. The phone number that ties all of it together, as Kurt's showing you all these wonderful images, is 816-540-7057. 816-540-7057.
You got it.
I got it. Okay, something else coming at you if you're 65 or closing in on that is Medicare. It's coming at you. I say it on the radio like a freight train because that's exactly how fast it's coming at you. Which part, which plan. The people who can navigate those waters, Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. 3600 South Nolan Road, Suite F. You can reach them on the phone there at 816-701-6661. But I think the easiest way to do it is through the website, MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. What's the best plan for you? How are you going to handle the gaps? These are the folks who can show you how to do it. You can't come to them. They'll come to you with in-home appointments. Determine the most cost-effective ways to fill the holes of Medicare. There are holes in Medicare. Kirk and Lori will tell you everything you need to know about that. MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. Okay. Do they think we're stupid? I think they do. I think the Democrats absolutely think that we are stupid and can't wait to go pull the lever or color in the box or whatever for Joe Biden. 4 more years of what we've lived through for the last 3.5. 4 more years. And he's being shameless about it. And they're going to be shameless about it, right? Buying votes. 153,000 families got student loan forgiveness. And just so we're clear, there is no such thing as forgiveness. It means taxpayers basically are covering the debt that Joe Biden canceled for you. All right?
Yeah, it's the old trick of just calling it something. You know, you just change the name of the bill. You make it called the Affordable Care Act, or you make it called, SAFE, is what SAVE, the SAVE plan. That's what he calls it.
Yeah.
So,
did you find the clip of where he's out in California with that family?
Yeah, he's at a library. It is maybe not the exact clip that you were looking for, but it is a clip very similar.
Yeah, roll that clip.
Okay. So here he is on the stump for the debt relief, and he's at some library somewhere.
The economy. That's why my administration has taken significant action to provide student debt relief to so many borrowers that many who didn't know they were able to get relief, and do it as quickly and as possible. Look, Early in my term, I announced a major plan to provide millions of working families with debt relief for their college student debt. Tens of millions of people in debt were literally about to be canceled, their debts. But my MAGA Republican friends in the Congress, elected officials, and special interests stepped in and sued us, and the Supreme Court blocked it. They blocked it. But that didn't stop me. I announced we were going to pursue alternative paths for student debt relief.
Yeah, he's
For as
awesome.
many
He's awesome. Well, the clip I was thinking about, he was sitting with a family, and of course they were black, because you got to make sure you got all the right images there.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I was gonna do more, but those mean old Republicans, they wouldn't let me, So, I mean, here you go. It's like, all right, there's 153,000 families I just sent a check to, and I took it from other people, but we're not going to talk about that. So if there's like 3 people in a household, 4 people in a household, how many votes is that I just bought?
Right. No, this is the clip that you were talking about. I'm not sure the exact moment, but I have seen this. It's pretty funny. Let's just check it out for a second.
Well, I mean, you got chicken fingers, you got the whole deal. I went the route of making sure I had a hamburger. So tell me about you guys. What you doing these days?
Why don't you share about your passion of sports?
I'm playing AAU basketball right now.
Are you really? Are you guard?
Yes, sir.
Now, what grade?
Oh, you play basketball?
7th grade.
No way.
Okay.
Right now I'm just basketball, playing guard on the JV team for my school.
How about in school? How y'all doing in school? You should tell.
It's just like
That's the family, though.
Yeah. No,
And-
he's buying the black vote with fried chicken.
Yeah. Well, remember,
he has a hamburger.
if you can't figure out if you're for him or Trump, you ain't black.
That's right. Don't
That
you
is a
forget it.
direct quote from Joe Biden.
Don't you forget it.
This also was very quiet in the news. They haven't made a big deal out of this, but the New York Times, all of a sudden, no friend to the Democratic Party. Man, they are shocked by this. The New York Times had a piece that Joe Biden is quietly walking back his stupid mandates on EVs.
Yeah, and this is New York Times is behind a paywall, so this is Politico, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. So basically, because people aren't buying them, they're not sold on this. That was one of the main things that he ran on. Again, are you better off than you were 3.5 years ago? Is America better off than it was 3.5 years ago?
Come on, man.
Yeah. Stupid. And I've said it all along, and you have too. And go back to the early stages of this podcast. It was stupid from the beginning. We did a complete episode on that with one of the biggest car dealers in Kansas City that has every brand you can imagine. And we took apart the EV argument piece by piece.
This is the key paragraph from the Politico article. Excuse me. Let's try that again. The Environmental Protection Agency is leaning towards approving a compromise regulation on car and truck pollution that could slow the initial pace of the required cuts compared with a draft proposal by the administration released last year, the 3 people said. The change could mean that for the rest of this decade, electric vehicle sales would climb more incrementally than EPA had originally projected.
Yeah. I paid almost $4 a gallon for gasoline in Indiana over the weekend. It's just crazy what's happened here. And again, I've seen these memes. You can go find it. Find out what everything was on January 20th, 2021, when Joe Biden took the oath of office, and you're going to find out that life was a lot better in America before Joe Biden took over. And they're going to do everything in their power to obfuscate this, to distort Donald Trump's record. And in most cases, the media is going to go right along with them. So you got to watch out for this. But speaking of the New York Times, I want to go back to this because she was the Jackson County prosecutor when I started working at KFKF. She was on my show several times. We had a great relationship, and she positioned herself as a moderate. Claire McCaskill, I'm a moderate. I'm essentially a Republican, but I'm running as a Democrat. Well, now we know what she is. She is a flame-throwing liberal. She's over at MSNBC, and she was just apoplectic that the New York Times had the audacity to fact-check Joe Biden. They fact-checked Joe Biden. What the hell are they thinking over there?
Let's check it out.
Elected, please tell us that you've learned your lesson. So the only blemish on the great country of America worldwide is, in fact, Donald Trump. And can I make a suggestion? I move that every newspaper in America quits doing any fact checks on Joe Biden until they fact check Donald Trump every morning on the front page. It is ridiculous that the New York Times fact checked Joe Biden on something.
Ridiculous.
I mean, he vomits lies. Trump vomits lies. And every day, over and over and over again. And it's just ridiculous that the New York Times is doing a fact check on Biden while they let Trump, while they're numb to the torrent of lies coming out of Trump's mouth.
Okay, so what we do on this podcast, whenever anybody says anything, it's like, wait a minute, stop, time out, let's look it up, let's get to the facts. I mean, and one thing that they have established on the left as a fact that we're all supposed to go along with is Donald Trump vomits lies. Every time he opens his mouth, he's lying.
Right. Yeah, it's like name one.
They can't. Well, they can't. I mean, that should be the question to them. Okay,
you are fake news.
What are you lying about? What's he lying about? Okay, let's look it up. Does Donald Trump exaggerate? Is he bombastic? Absolutely. You would cop to that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's like the sky is blue or the sky is orange, I mean, okay, the sky's blue. We can establish that today, right? There are certain facts that you can establish. And when Joe Biden drops the ball, has a gaffe, lies, it's like, oh, that's just Joe being Joe, and Joe's a good guy, right?
And also, I mean, she's with a straight face on MSNBC claiming that the New York Times doesn't, quote unquote, fact check Donald Trump. Like, that's not all they do. I mean, they spent 4 years, every single article, it seemed like, was crapping on Trump, saying he's a liar, saying, he's a Russian agent, all this other stuff. And you're really going to sit here and say, because they fact checked Joe Biden one time, and I don't even know what she's talking about. It's probably some softball BS anyways, because they did something one time that you don't like, now all of a sudden they don't fact check Donald Trump. Give me a break.
I just love to see Claire McCaskill's hair on fire, because eventually Missouri woke up and said, wait a minute, you sold yourself as a real moderate, borderline Republican, and you're a flame-throwing liberal, and they threw her ass out of the Senate. And now she's getting paid by MSNBC. You got to love that. Okay, there are rumors that Joe will do what he could have done on day one, and that is shut down the border. I thought the border was secure. Vice President Harris said that. In fact, he could shut down the border, right? He can shut down the border with executive orders. He could basically take every one of his executive orders that he signed on day one and tear them up and go back to Trump-era policies, and the border would indeed be secure. And they're thinking that this stunt is going to happen before he somehow delivers the State of the Union. I can't even imagine how he's going to do that because he can't put three words together anyway. But he's saying that he doesn't really have the power to do it. He needs Congress to do it, yada, yada, yada. I did a little Google search myself, right? And there is something called 8 U.S. Code 1185. If you look that up, you will see that the president has all the power that he needs to shut down the border. He could do it right now. He could have done it before that poor girl down in Georgia was brutally murdered, which we'll talk about here in a second. He has the power to do it. Right?
Yep.
He could go back to remain in Mexico. Gee, there was a great idea from Donald Trump. Right?
Here's a little bit on it. Section A, restrictions and prohibitions. Unless otherwise ordered by the president, it shall be unlawful for any alien to depart from or enter or attempt to depart from or enter the United States, except under such reasonable rules, regulations, and orders, and subject to such limitations and exemptions as the president may prescribe. So, I mean, even that in itself gives the president the power to determine what constitutes reasonable rules, regulations, and orders. For any person to transport or attempt to transport from or into the United States another person with knowledge or reasonable cause to believe that the departure or entry of such other person is forbidden by this section.
Okay.
Yada, yada, yada.
So, in simple terms, Joe Biden, you fucked this up. Language, sorry. You screwed this up, right? You made this mess.
Yeah.
You told these people to come.
And it's also very par for the course for what these people do with how they talk about their power. If it's something that they want to accomplish, if it's an end that they desire, then they'll use whatever power necessary. You know, I mean, he just talked about in the last segment with the student loan forgiveness. He said, well, the Supreme Court blocked it. Congress wouldn't go for it, but we're going to do it anyways, you know? So obviously he doesn't care about what his actual executive authority is. He'll use it even when it doesn't exist in order to get to the ends that he wants to see. But when it's something that he doesn't want, like closing the border, something that he thinks looks bad for him politically, then he's, oh, well, you know, we need Congress and you know, it's out of my hands and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, he wipes his hands clean.
Well,
so it's not the same message.
We just showed you in the U.S. Code where he has all the power that he needs to take care of this as President of the United States. Okay, so here's another thing before we leave the Joe Biden segment of today's podcast, and something that you need to tell your friends on the left, and maybe they're okay with it, all right? A vote for Joe is a vote for Kamala. A vote for Joe is a vote for Kamala. I mean, he's 81 years old, and he is an old 81. You've seen young 80-year-olds, young 81-year-olds? Oh, man. Is that what we're going to really go to? And we're going to talk about the Veeps sweepstakes on the Republican side here in a minute. And to me, the number one thing, if I were the nominee of either political party, the number one thing for me would be, can this person step in if I have a massive heart attack and drop dead and be president on day one? Do you really think, even after almost 4 years as vice president, that she is remotely qualified to be president?
Yeah, it's like when you mentioned talking to Democrats or liberals about who they're going to vote for. You talk to, at least my friends or the people that I've talked to, you ask them about Kamala and they're like, no, we don't like nobody likes her.
Right.
You know, so
her staff didn't like her. Her staff was quitting left and right.
Yeah.
People who really know her don't like her.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone really likes Biden either. Very few people, at least. You know, that they're voting against Donald Trump. That's the whole campaign strategy.
That's it. You know, we keep talking about this. It's like, ask anyone, what has Joe Biden constructively done? And they cannot answer the question. All they can tell you is Trump's an asshole.
Right.
And that may be a hole in the game, and that may be what reelects Joe Biden. You got to think, you know, and we're speaking to the choir here. I get that you, for the most part, believe what we're talking about, but there are too many people out there on the other side who will just go in there and cast a vote for Joe Biden.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They're
going to do it.
Yeah, maybe they need a colonoscopy, right?
Maybe they do.
Dr. Mark Taramina. He's looked up the assholes of Republicans and Democrats. He's bipartisan in that way, and he'll take care of you. And this is a serious subject that we're making a little bit of light about, but Midwest GI Health and Wellness is one of our sponsors here on the podcast. And if you're 45 and you have not had your colonoscopy yet, please schedule it, because in the early stages, this is something that is very, very treatable, okay? Later stages, not so much. And we're seeing more and more stories. You see it about celebrities. You don't hear it about, you know, Joe Blow out there. But more and more celebrities are dying young from colon cancer. It will kill you. But caught early, it can be treated. And that's why we send you to Midwest GI Health and Wellness, Dr. Mark Taramina and his wonderful staff there. Google rating 4.9 out of 5 stars. That is the highest in Kansas City. They can take care of the upper GI as well. They can do both at the same time. And you don't need a referral. So if you're ready for your colonoscopy, your screening, get it done. Get it scheduled. Midwest GI Health and Wellness, Lee Summit, 816-836-2200. They are on the web at midwestgihealth.com. Okay? And then after you've done that and you got everything cleaned out, you're going to be good and hungry. We need you to
Sorry. Big intro there.
Well, you know, Jim Dingman just had his birthday. I thought maybe they were going to sing happy birthday to him or whatever. But you got a birthday party. There's no better place to celebrate it than Fun House Pizza. Look at if you're looking at the images, look at the fun that these kids are having. They're playing games. Look at that guy. All right. They got, is that Cookie Monster there?
That's knockoff Elmo, I think.
Knockoff Elmo. Okay,
Yes.
fine. That looked like a young Claire McCaskill. I can't believe she'd eat at Funhouse Pizza. Funhouse Pizza is on 50 Highway in Lee Summit, 7 Highway in Blue Springs. awesome pizza. If you like your toppings piled high, Jim Dingman does not disappoint. The beverages are cold. The atmosphere is fun. If you got a baseball team getting ready, you got Little League coming up, T-ball or whatever, you got to have the parents meeting. No better place in eastern Jackson County than Funhouse Pizza, 50 Highway in Lee Summit, 7 Highway in Blue Springs. Meanwhile, on the Donald Trump side, first of all, happy 22nd Amendment Day. As we're recording this, the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution was passed on this day in 1951. It limits a president to 2 terms. Now, why, from George Washington to 1950, do you think we needed to put a constitutional amendment in about 2 terms?
FDR.
Right. The greatest president in the history of the Republic, according to Democrats. The only one who stood for re-election 3 times. He was elected to the office 4 times. Now, what did he do while he was there? He federalized most of the economy, right? He packed the Supreme Court. And Trump's a dictator. Right? Now, let me tell you what's going to happen, regardless of which one of these old guys wins this election coming up. It would be the last term for Joe Biden. I think it could be the last months. He looks like FDR in his 4th term. And FDR's 4th term did not last very long, and Harry Truman became president. So I'm just telling you, it's a cautionary tale. FDR dropped dead right after he took the oath of office, and there was his VP. Thank God it was Harry Truman.
Right.
I can't imagine Kamala Harris doing this. And Donald Trump knows that if he wins, he can't run for re-election. It's his 2nd term.
Right.
So for all this talk coming from the media that you're voting for a dictator, he's going to eliminate democracy. What the are you smoking? Mm-hmm. We wouldn't stand for that, would we?
Yeah, and it's also coming from the people that are throwing their political opposition in jail, opening our borders, sending billions of taxpayer dollars overseas. I just don't care anymore. I don't want to hear it. It's like, you want to call me a dictator? Okay, I'll be a dictator. Are we going to fix the country? Like, go screw yourself.
Yeah, fix the country, okay? And he knows he's got 4 years to do it and maybe set up a bench. And we have a great bench of younger leaders on the Republican side that we both feel great about running this country. And maybe one of them will be Donald Trump's vice president. He did have a huge victory in South Carolina, maybe not as big as some had hoped. It's a 20-point victory over Nikki Haley, and she says she's going to stay in the election. Is there a little bit of a canary in the coal mine here? Is there any worry that he only beat her by 20 points when we thought it was going to be 30 or 40?
Well, I think it's pretty big because, South Carolina is her home state.
Yeah.
So, she got creamed in her home state. I like this little blurb from Politico from whoever wrote this, but you can see here Trump got 59.8%, Nikki Haley got 39.5%, which for it being her home state, in my opinion, is a pretty damn large margin. That's, 20 points in your home state doesn't look good. But this guy that wrote it up says, in another world, a one-on-one shot with Donald Trump in her home state would have been just what Nikki Haley needed to notch her first victory of the primaries. But Trump won a blowout victory with the race called before a single vote was even tallied.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, and I hope I'm wrong, because early on in this podcast, I told you I wanted somebody other than Donald Trump to be the standard bearer. And I told you that if Trump won the nomination, I would support him. But the fear in the back of my mind is that there's going to be too many of those people who say, Trump's an asshole, and they're going to either stay home or vote for Joe Biden. And I hope that I'm wrong. I really want to be wrong.
Well, this is the point where Nikki Haley needs to step aside and get out of the way, and she's not doing it. She's, sticking to her guns, even after suffering a major loss in her home state. Here's her on the night of the defeat, acting like she is doing anything.
There are huge numbers of voters in our Republican primaries who are saying they want an alternative. I said earlier this week that no matter what happens in South Carolina, I would continue to run for president.
As she just says, I'm a woman of my word. I'm not dropping out.
Yeah, well, today as we're recording this is the Michigan primary, and she's probably going to lose that one big time. And then next week is Super Tuesday, and surely after she gets trounced in all of those, she's going to bow out. And then it can be one-on-one, Trump versus Biden. And all Donald Trump has to say, I mean, he said it over the weekend, is, Joe Biden, you're fired.
Right.
You know, if Joe Biden were your employee and you were evaluating him based on his job over the last 3.5 years, would you give him a new contract or would you fire him?
I think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah. And again, we've got to coach people. You've got to be in the face of your friends who would go the other side and say, please, just tell me one thing that he hasn't screwed up, and fire the guy. And, you know, it's too late for Laken Riley. And just horrible, horrible story here about, you know, an illegal who entered the country illegally, and then he killed this woman. And he brutally killed her. Killed her. And by the way, he didn't use a gun.
Right. And it was on a college campus, too, which is kind of even scarier. I mean, you know, you think about college campuses being pretty nice, you know, pretty safe places. There's a lot of kids there. You know, if you're a parent, you send your kid off to college, you expect them to be in a safe environment, and that's obviously not the case. And yeah, I mean, the details of this are pretty gruesome. Blunt force trauma to the head while on a jog on campus again by a lake. An investigator also alleges the suspected killer concealed Riley's death by dragging the victim to a secluded area.
Yeah.
So he just beat her to death randomly and then tried to drag the body away, I guess, so that he could.
I read he also disfigured her skull. Yeah. I mean, it just nasty. And again, did not use a gun. I mean, so, oh, well, doesn't fit the narrative. I guess we're going to move on.
And there's, you know, some pretty telling clips, you know, two from CNN in particular that are related to this that really just kind of show you where the media's at and all this. Here's the first one. I'm curious your thoughts on this.
The suspect in the death of a nursing student in Athens here in Georgia has been denied bond, according to jail records. Authorities say Jose Antonio Ibarra didn't know the victim and didn't go to the same school. The 26-year-old Ibarra was taken into custody on Friday, a day after nursing student Laken Riley was found dead. Riley was a junior at the Augusta College of Nursing who had gone jogging on Thursday before she disappeared. Police say it appears to have been a crime of opportunity, and then examination revealed she died from blunt force trauma. The Migrant Welcome Center in San Diego, California is closed due to a lack of funding, the nonprofit operating center says. The center assisted some 81,000 adult migrants who were processed and released by U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
So, yeah, there you go. I mean,
well, what's your take on it? Because it seemed pretty fact-based to me.
Well, there's no mention of him being illegal at all.
Also, they didn't mention that. All right.
Yeah, and then it goes right from the story of her being killed by an illegal with no mention of him being illegal. It goes right into a story about a quote-unquote migrant welcome center closing due to lack of funding.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, it's like, let's have more of this.
Had Donald Trump been reelected, you wouldn't see any of this, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And Laken Riley would still be jogging and on her way to a degree. It's terrible.
Yeah, totally. He had a statement on it. We can just put it on screen and I'll have to read the whole thing. But he's basically saying, you had mentioned this, you know, in the notes, that he pledged to close the border. Crooked Joe Biden's border invasion is destroying our country and killing our citizens. He talks about the murder. It should have never happened. When I'm your president, we will immediately seal the border, stop the invasion, and on day one, we will begin the largest deportation operation of illegal criminals in American history.
Yeah.
So we'll see if, I mean, he actually holds up his promise, but that would be great.
Well, I think he will. I mean, the border was something he ran on the first time. I mean, it was something very important to him, and Joe Biden basically just crapped all over it on day one.
Yeah.
And went with his promise. We want you to come here. You remember the images we showed of all those people showing up at the border wearing Biden-Harris T-shirts?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you told us to come. Here we are.
And they're asking them, too, on the border. You know, they're journalists that are going down there and interviewing these people, and they're saying, who do you want for president? And, of course, they're all saying Biden because – and they're very honest about it. I mean, they're not hiding the ball. They're saying we want Joe Biden because he's the one that is letting us in, you know.
And you've got another long clip you want to show here?
Yeah. So this is a good conversation piece and very fascinating. I actually hadn't seen this before, but it's kind of behind the curtain a little bit. Trump, this is during the Trump presidency, and he is in the Oval Office with Nancy Pelosi here on the left, Mike Pence, who says 0 words throughout this entire thing. He just sits there, and then Chuck Schumer, and they are negotiating the government shutdown. One of the negotiations that was happening over the government shutdown, and they kind of get into it a little bit, and it's pretty interesting, like Trump's demeanor and personality when talking to them, and then their obfuscation of the issue. So just a couple of clips from this. It's a 10-minute long segment. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I strongly suggest you go check it out on your own if you can.
Let me ask you this, and we're doing this in a very friendly manner. It doesn't help for me to take a vote in the House where I will win easily with the Republicans.
You will not win.
It doesn't help to take that vote because I'm not going to get the vote of the Senate. I need 10 senators. That's the problem.
You have the White House. You have the Senate.
I have the White House. The White House is done, and the House would give me the vote if I wanted it. But I can't because I need, Nancy, I need 10 votes from Chuck.
All right, let me say something here.
The old hand shush.
The fact is, you do not have the votes in the House.
Nancy, I do. And we need border security. Nancy, Nancy, we need border security. It's very simple.
Of course we do.
We need border security. People are pouring into our country, including terrorists. We have terrorists. We caught 10 terrorists over the last very short period of time. 10. These are very serious people. Our border agents, all of our law enforcement has been incredible what they've done. But we caught 10 terrorists. These are people that were looking to do harm. We need the wall. We need, more important than anything, we need border security, of which the wall is just a piece. But it's important. Chuck, did you want to say something?
Yeah, here's what I want to say. We have a lot of disagreements here. The Washington Post today gave you a whole lot of Pinocchios because they say you constantly misstate how much the wall is built, how much of the wall is built, and how much is there. But that's not the point here. We have a disagreement about the wall, whether it's effective or not. Not on border security, but on the wall. We do not want to shut down the government. You have called 20 times to shut down the government. You say, I want to shut down the government. We don't. We want to come to an agreement. If we can't come to an agreement, we have solutions that will pass the House and Senate right now and will not shut down the government, and that's what we're urging you to do. Not threaten to shut down the ears.
60 people.
The Senate. Excuse me, did we win the Senate? We won the Senate.
When the president brags that he won North Dakota and Indiana, he's in real trouble.
When I
did.
Let me say this.
We did win
Let me say this.
North Dakota
This
and
is the
Indiana.
most unfortunate thing. We came in here in good faith, and we're entering into this kind of a discussion in the public view.
But it's not bad, Nancy.
No,
it's called transparency.
I know it's not transparency when we're not stipulating to a set of facts, and when we want to have a debate with you about saying we confront some of those facts.
You know what? We need border security. That's what we're going to be talking about, border security. If we don't have border security, we'll shut down the government. This country needs border security. The wall is a part of border security. Let's have a talk. We're going to get the wall built, and we've done a lot of wall already.
How big a part of border security is the wall?
It's a big section. It's a big part of it.
Is it everything that you need?
It's a big part of it. We need to have effective border security. We need a wall in certain parts. No, not in all parts, but in certain parts of a 2,000-mile border, we need a wall.
Smug
How much money?
Chuck Schumer is.
We are doing it much under budget. We're actually way under budget on the areas that we've renovated and areas that we've built. I would say if we got $5 billion, we could do a tremendous chunk of wall.
How much of that went to Ukraine?
Yes.
Well, we're going to see. We're going to see. Look, we have to have the wall.
So then Chuck Schumer pushes back on him some more. The part at the end is the best. I'm going to just skip to the end real quick, and then we can talk about it. Come on.
This is the Mike Pence part.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything the whole time.
Problems are pouring
it's
in.
Fantastic.
It is. This isn't about. This is about the security of our country. To take an oath to protect and defend, and we don't want to have that mischaracterized by anyone. And
I agree with that. No, I agree with that.
We are so let us have a conversation where we don't have to contradict in public the statistics that you put forth, but instead can have a conversation about what will really work and what the American people deserve from us at this uncertain time in their lives.
The one thing I think we can agree on is we shouldn't shut down the government over a dispute. And you want to shut it down. You keep talking about it.
The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very quickly. And
20 times.
I don't want to do what you did.
20 times
Chuck,
you have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wool. None of us have said.
You want to know something?
You've said it.
Okay, you want to put that on
You've
my...
said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And
We
I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
We
tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut it down for border
But we
security.
believe you shouldn't shut it down.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah. Well, you've got in Donald Trump a non-politician CEO who basically does what a CEO does. He calls a meeting, says, we've got a problem. How are we going to fix it?
Yeah.
And he's on point, right? And, you know, to the point of security, any form of government, from city all the way to the federal, if you don't have security, what do you have?
Yeah.
We're seeing that in the big cities. We're seeing it in Kansas City. You know, we don't have security here. And what do you see? A murder a day.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have a secure border. What are you seeing? Illegals pouring across the border, and some of them very bad people.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like, even just the personal aspect of that, like Nancy Pelosi throughout the whole meeting there, she's trying to say, well, we shouldn't be talking about this in front of cameras. Why not? I mean, it's like you're getting embarrassed. You're getting embarrassed by this guy. He's steamrolling you. And you don't want to talk about it in front of cameras because you want to go behind closed doors and come up with some deal that does nothing so you can sign a piece of paper and keep the government open. And Trump's not having it. Now, of course, he could have done better, you know, on the border, but in a lot of ways he did everything he could because he was being, you know, obfuscated by these clowns the entire time. So I just thought it was really interesting, and peak Trump, you know, we need him back. I love the hand shush, you know, excuse me, Nancy, excuse me, Nancy, like, you know, it's just great.
Well, I'm a small government kind of guy. It's never going to be small enough for me. I mean, I just you're going to take that clip out and use it against me. I can just feel that in my bones. Anyway,
I would never.
We need to defend the borders. We need a strong military. You know, we need a social safety net. Aside from that, government has gotten into every part of our lives. It needs to retreat. We need regulation, you know, enough regulation to keep us safe, not enough regulation to stifle our economy. And that's where I would end the government. So when they have these government shutdowns, quote unquote, it's not the essential things that we think about. It's not security. It's not the military. You know, it's the paper pushers out there. Biggest employer in this country is the federal government. I think that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, here in Kansas City, we have GEHA, which is now renamed Arrowhead Stadium, you know, pays for a Patrick Mahomes sponsorship.
Right.
They're all over TV. They're all over media. How do you think they get that money? They're insurance for federal employees. It's because the pool of federal employees is so large, you know, it's tens, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, I'm sure. And it extends all the way out to Kansas City. You know, it's one thing if you're in the Beltway. I used to live in Northern Virginia, near DC, and everyone there is some kind of federal contractor or employee. I mean, it's still a problem, but it's understandable because of the proximity. But, you know, we're here in the middle of the country, and it's still the case here. So,
well, if Donald Trump wins, this podcast is going to continue, and it's going to be about chipping away at federal overreach, government overreach. And
and I hope he continues on that track if he does become president again, which we hope he does. You know, we're at code red with the border. I mean, we are at serious levels of problems that are really having an effect on everyday Americans. Shut down the government, fire these people, do whatever it takes to, you know, send out the National Guard, send out the military. And I think he uniquely, even over some other Republicans, you know, in the 2016 field, for example, has the balls and the courage to do things like that.
All right.
But we'll see.
Veep stakes. Let's have a little discussion on that. As Donald Trump put out a list of people that he is considering, Ron DeSantis was on that list. He has already withdrawn and said, you know, he's going to not rule out a run in 2028. 2028 is wide open. Think about that. The Democrats really don't have anybody. I mean, they've got Gavin Newsom. Really? I mean, I'd love to have an argument about what's the better run state in this country, California or Florida. And the Republicans have a slew of really good, conservative, young people ready to take the mantle. So 2028 could be very interesting, and Ron DeSantis may be part of that. So what I would look for as a VP, I already talked about this, is somebody who could be president on day one. Somebody, if it were me, who balances my personality. That's something to think about in terms of Donald Trump. Somebody who brings something to the table, maybe. Not necessarily, maybe. If you think about it in the past, when John F. Kennedy ran for president, he needed Texas. Texas was very purple in those days, could have gone either way, and LBJ delivered Texas for John F. Kennedy. So you think about it in terms of that. So I've got some names that I kind of called the list to, and we can talk about what you think their strengths or weaknesses are. Tim Scott is the first one on the list for me, and I love Tim. Tim is not a governor. He's a senator. I like governors because governors have run something, right? Much like Donald Trump ran his company, and we always made fun of Joe Biden that he never even ran a hot dog stand. A governor has run a state and dealt with some of the issues that you'll deal with on a larger scale in the national government as either president or vice president. Tim Scott has not done that, but he is in the United States Senate. He speaks conservative very well, right? Doesn't hurt in my world that he's a black man. I don't think there's any that sends a message to the black community. Now I know what the Democrats want it to be. They call him Uncle Tim, right?
I'm sure they do.
Yeah. But he's a guy who says you don't need the federal government. You don't need the federal government. You have a skill set. You can be a success in this country, and he says it because he is it. He's a guy who came up with enterprise zones for minority businesses. He's done things that have made a difference in the black community, unlike these clowns on the other side. So I like Tim Scott.
Yeah, he's all right. He's all right.
That's all you got?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only angle that makes sense to me for picking him is like picking a minority, basically, is picking a black guy. If you're trying to do that to score political points, then you could pick him. I think that's a mistake. I think if you're just picking the best senator, there's other better senators. And I think if you're not wanting a senator, if you're wanting a governor or somebody outside of politics, then there are other better picks too. So I mean, the only reason that makes sense to me to pick Tim Scott is because he's black, and that's just not a winning strategy.
Well, and he does balance Trump in that he's not a flamethrower. He can answer questions off the cuff and state conservatism as it should be. So I like him. I don't know that I would pick him. Next on the list is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Now, Kristi Noem is a governor. She's run a state. It's a small state, but she's run a small state. She again balances Trump with a calmer approach to politics. She's big on the Second Amendment, and she's a Western governor.
Yep,
much like Sarah Palin was when she was picked by John McCain.
My take on her, I don't really know as much about her as some of the other potential VP picks. From what I've heard, she has a good track record as governor. She's attractive, which certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, if we're being honest, that does play into politics. I think probably the biggest downside to her is that people don't know her. She's not well known, and she's also like within the Trump base. So she's not really bringing anybody new in.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think anybody is voting for Trump that wouldn't have otherwise because he picked Kristi Noem.
She's a chicken soup pick.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt anything. Okay, moving on to Vivek. And I know you like him. Trump likes him a lot. My question on Vivek is, he has zero experience in government, and I know you kind of like that, but you can't have two of those.
Why not?
Well, I just don't think you can. And I think you've got to pick a guy or a gal who could step in on day one. You're comfortable with him being president of the United States if Donald Trump had a stroke and died?
I mean, he's a very smart guy. I think he'd probably figure it out pretty quickly. I do see the benefit to having somebody that has some experience in politics. That's probably the biggest downside to Vivek is he has no experience in politics. But and there's also, to me, I do like him, but he does kind of come across as a little bit of an opportunist sometimes. He's kind of flip-flopped on some issues, which could be good or bad depending on his intent, which is hard to judge. But he's certainly very smart. He certainly has some great ideas. I think he would be a good pick for being like an idea guy.
Yeah.
He would be in Trump's ear all the time talking about this is what you need to talk about. Like, for example, they were campaigning together and Vivek brought up the central bank digital currency to Trump, and Trump started talking about it. It wasn't something that was on his radar, I guess, and because Vivek brought it up, Trump started talking about it. So I think that's good. I mean, Vivek, I think essentially, even more than just being a vice president, he would sort of like be an asset for Trump. He would build Trump up and give him good things to talk about and good policy
like a consultant.
Ideas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the plus. Minus, he has no experience in politics. And again, I think like Kristi Noem, he might not have much crossover. Probably more than Kristi Noem would, because he is sort of an interesting person. He's popular on Twitter and stuff like that, but otherwise, who knows?
All right. What about his press secretary, now Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Boy, there's somebody with rock-ribbed conservatism who is in her first term as governor of Arkansas and is already just running laps around the state of Missouri, which is just to the north, in terms of, school choice, education. She's doing a fantastic job down in Arkansas. She was the face of the administration for a while. She's well known within the Beltway. I like her.
Yeah, I think she's a good pick. Pretty safe pick. Again, not bringing on anyone new, not expanding the base at all, because everyone that would be a fan of her is already a fan of Trump. But if he wants, a good sidekick that is a fighter and well-spoken, she would be a good pick.
All right. Tucker Carlson. That's kind of a wild card. And I know you like Tucker.
Yep.
And you'd be okay with him picking Tucker as vice president?
I would, yeah. What are your thoughts?
He doesn't pass my test of being ready to be president on day one. He doesn't pass my test of being an alter ego to Donald Trump. He is basically Donald Trump. He's going to be a flame-throwing, bombastic... I don't know that you can have two flame-throwing, bombastic people at the top of a ticket.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you can. Let's go.
Yeah. So Tucker's going to be a no for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tucker is a similar pick to Vivek. And the reason I say that is because he is very popular on, like, conservative media, like on Twitter and stuff like that, obviously. But I think he is a little bit different than Vivek because... Yeah, he hasn't been a politician, but he's been in politics for decades. He has experience in politics. So I think he would pretty quickly fit into sort of the machine of the executive branch and the White House and all that.
Let me try it from this angle. Who does he bring to the table to vote that Donald Trump doesn't already have?
That's exactly. I was going to say, similar to some of these other picks, I don't think he brings in anyone new.
The one that I wrote in based on a news story this morning, Ted Cruz is being somewhat coy about whether he would be a vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. They fought pretty hard back in 2016. I remember the clip that Ted Cruz had is like, everybody on this stage is either fat, ugly, blah, 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 going after Trump because he was insulting everybody there. But they've gotten tight over the years.
Yeah, they've gotten closer. I think it's all is fair in love and war, and politics is an art of war. Trump was pretty, he was pretty ruthless in the campaign. I mean, he basically insinuated that Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that.
That's pretty funny. But I don't know. I think Ted Cruz is a good senator. He has a very good track record. But I think he's better off in the Senate than as vice president, to be honest. And he's not exciting. He's not a new face. He's been around for a while. He's better off in the Senate. He can get more work done there. He can be an ally for Trump in the Senate. And I think that's where he should stay.
If you're going to take anybody from Texas, I would take Greg Abbott. I like Greg.
Yeah.
And Greg certainly made, illegal immigration fueled by Joe Biden a national issue by sending some of those folks to sanctuary cities where they care. Boy, those people are trying to repeal those sanctuary city ordinances faster than, you can spin your head. Greg Abbott is in a wheelchair. Does that matter? I don't think it does.
I think it doesn't not matter. I mean, would I still like him? I mean, yeah, I don't care if he's in a wheelchair, but I think it does, public appearance matters in politics. Like I said about Kristi Noem, I mean, she's attractive, and that matters. Whether for better or worse, I think it is a sign that it's perceived maybe as weakness or something like that. I mean, FDR was in a wheelchair in his later years, and he still got a lot done. He was a very powerful president, but it's not the ideal image,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I would say similar to Ted Cruz, I don't know when his term is up, but I think he's probably at this point, he's having this big border fight with the federal government. He's, fighting for border security. I would think if you're a Texan, certainly, or an American, you would want him in Texas fighting that border fight, not moving to Washington.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Ultimately, it's going to be Donald Trump's pick. Is there anybody I'm leaving out?
There's one more that I think is very interesting, which is Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Democrat from Hawaii, right?
Yeah. In the article, the Politico article here, during a Fox News town hall event, sorry, I'm cutting to the screen here. During a Fox News town hall event, host Laura Ingraham asked Donald Trump about 6 possible choices for his running mate: DeSantis, Tim Scott, Vivek, Byron Donalds, Kristi Noem, and Tulsi Gabbard. Also, DeSantis is on the list too. Are they all on your short list? She asked. They are, Trump said, before adding, honestly, all these people are good. They're all good. They're all solid. Yeah. Byron Donalds, I don't think is a serious choice.
I don't either.
He,
I like him, but a little more seasoning.
Yeah, he's not experienced enough. And then similarly with DeSantis, he's probably better off in Florida.
Yeah, and he's eyeing 2028.
He's eyeing 2028, and also I think he's kind of tainted his political image by going after Trump in the way that he did. I don't see them being...
Tulsi was in the House, correct?
Yeah.
From Hawaii?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think she's one of the best picks, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. I like her. I don't think she could be president on day one. I think she needs more seasoning. I would love to see her in the cabinet.
Yeah.
She's a veteran, possible. Right?
She's a veteran, yeah. I mean, I think... If you're
let her run the Pentagon,
talking about her becoming president or her political experience, she's probably on the lower end. But in terms of the campaign and the election, I think she's one of the better picks because she has a lot of crossover. Republicans like her. A lot of Republicans like her because she's a veteran. She's a moderate Democrat that actually left the Democrat Party and became an independent. She's conservative on a lot of issues, even though she's also liberal on some issues, But she's a reasonable person. Again, she's attractive, very attractive, if I might add. And she has a good way of speaking. She, I think, comes across as a strong leader, and I think she would be a good pick. And unlike a lot of these other candidates, she has the potential for bringing in new voters, which is interesting.
That is interesting. She could bring in Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these these kind of moderate Democrats like that listen to Joe Rogan and watch stand-up comedy on YouTube but they hate Trump. They don't want to vote for Trump, so they're going to hold their nose and vote for Joe Biden because at least he's not Trump. And I think certainly people my age and older people too, Gen X people, I think she has the potential to bring some of those people over.
You're winning me over here. Because again, one of my criteria is what do you bring to the table? And maybe she doesn't bring a state. And if she brought Hawaii, who would care? It's only 3 electoral votes. But if she brought in a wave of younger voters, if she could excite a wave of younger voters, I think I'd be in on that.
Yeah. It's an interesting pick, and it used to happen a lot more. You mentioned FDR and Truman,
right?
Where presidential candidates used to sort of pick somebody that was more complementary to them, maybe on the other side or a moderate on the other side. where they could kind of work together, bounce ideas off of each other, and maybe not agree on every single issue, but it would bring more voters in. It would create a broader coalition. That was kind of the idea back in the day.
Well, that didn't happen with Truman. Truman was the pick for the fourth term. They never even met. And basically, you had Alvin Barkley, who was vice president for a long time. And from what I've read, FDR really didn't even want Truman on the ticket, but he got stuck with him. And FDR, after winning a fourth term, thought he was president for life. So it really didn't matter who the vice president was. Right. And then it really did matter who the vice president was. And Harry Truman from Missouri did a great job. Okay, moving this thing right along here. Trump's legal woes continue. Targeted, politically motivated prosecutions. We've said that over and over again. Is there anything new, anything to update there? You got Fannie down in Georgia, and you got the clowns in New York.
I mean, they're getting embarrassed. I think the coin is going to flip. The tables are going to turn on them. Fannie looks like she is in big trouble. Maybe she's going to jail now. So we'll see what happens. But I hope that these people are exposed for the corrupt actors that they are.
If I lived in New York and the prosecutor was spending all this time going after Donald Trump while people are being killed every day, how does that make sense? In what world does that make sense?
It doesn't.
It really doesn't. I'll tell you what, if you're thinking about getting a new home, that might make a lot of sense to you. And Michael Schroer is the guy who can get it done for you. Michael Schroer, real estate professional, RE/MAX Heritage. We love having him on the podcast. And if you're ready to move, the interest rates are kind of high right now, but that's all relative. Home prices, the number of homes that are available is very small. Right? It's competition out there. So if you're ready for that new home, whether it's your first home, your forever home, you want some land that you're going to build on, Michael Schroer can navigate all those waters for you. He's been a Kansas City resident with 35 years of residential and commercial construction experience. He's got the knowledge to help you find the right home for your needs, and his clients' interests are always his number one priority. He's licensed on both sides of the state line. He's a great guy. He's a fan of the podcast. He called me and wanted to be involved in the podcast. So if you're looking for your next home, if you're ready to sell your home, make this the guy that you reach out to. Michael Schroer, 816-783-5800. You can find him on the web at michaelschroer.com. We'll spell that for you. Michael, I think you know how to spell that. Schroer is SCHROER.com. michaelschroer.com. Let him help you find your next home, or maybe it's your first home. Good guy.
Thanks, Michael.
And anytime you're dealing with your home, you got to get it insured. And the guy that we recommend, of course, is Bob Watson, Blue Springs local State Farm agent for 5 decades. He's officed in Blue Springs, but that doesn't mean he can't help you. He's licensed in both Missouri and Kansas. You see all the cute commercials that are out there. Surprisingly great rates. You can bundle it all. You get Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and Bob Watson on your team. And Bob's going to do the heavy lifting in the insurance department. 816-229-7878, auto, home, life, commercial insurance. The pontoons will be in the lakes before you know it. He insures those. If it can be insured, State Farm can do it, and Bob Watson will take care of you every step of the way.
Tremendous people.
2 pickings from what we call politics American style on the way out. Barbara Lee. She's a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate in California, and she is running, her core issue is a $50 an hour minimum wage. $50.
You're calling for a $50 an hour federal minimum wage. That's 7 times the current national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Can you explain how that would be economically sustainable for small businesses? You have 60 seconds.
First, let me say I owned and ran a small business for 11 years. I created hundreds of jobs. Benefits, retirement benefits, also health care benefits. I know what worker productivity means, and that means that you have to make sure that your employees are taken care of and have a living wage. In the Bay Area, I believe it was the United Way, came out with a report that very recently, $127,000 for a family of 4 is just barely enough to get by. Another survey very recently, $104,000 for a family of 1, barely enough to get by. Low income because of the affordability crisis. And so just do the math. Just do the math. Of course, we have national minimum wages that we need to raise to a living wage. You're talking about $20, $25, fine. But I have got to be focused on what California needs and what the affordability factor is when we calculate.
Ding, the bell rings. Steve Garvey, standing right next to her, by the way, was a great first baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's running for the Senate as a Republican, and maybe on his name recognition he might get there, but that's typically going to be a Democrat seat. $50 an hour minimum wage adds up to $104,000 a year. Minimum. That means the schlub coming in off the street who gets an entry-level job who doesn't know what the hell they're doing, you got to pay him $104,000 a year.
Cashier at McDonald's, $104K a year.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to that McDonald's?
Oh, my gosh. Well, they're going to start closing. And then you know what you'll get from people like Barbara Lee? They're closing businesses in the inner city. That's racist.
That's right.
That's the number one play, and they go to it every time that they can, and that's exactly what will happen.
I mean, these people think money just grows on trees. Like, where does she think that value for work comes from?
Well, a lot of them think that there's rich people in this country who are sitting on a pile of cash, and they'll just eat it. They'll eat the increase. And yes, the Walton family is very rich, and people at Walmart don't make a whole lot of money. But you know what? This is a free country. It's a market-driven country. And if you don't like the job that you have, if you don't feel like you're getting enough value for your family, you go find another job.
Yeah.
You get some education. Maybe you get 2 jobs.
Or move. I mean, I don't believe this, but she mentioned in that clip that the cost of living for a single person in, I guess, San Francisco is $104,000. Now, like I said, I don't believe that.
Might be
but
right.
If that's true, I mean, move somewhere else. Move yesterday. That's ridiculous if that is true. And what do you think is going to happen to the cost of living when you increase the minimum wage to $50 an hour? I mean, your rent's going to go up from $2,500 a month, which it probably is now, to $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Everything is going to double. And it's like I said, they think money grows on trees. I mean, if
well, in government it does.
We've said this before, but if it's $50 an hour minimum wage, why not $100 an hour? Why not $200 an hour?
Exactly. Why? I mean, you've just picked a number with a dartboard. We'll go higher. We'll be those guys. We'll lean in that way, right? $200 an hour.
That would be funny if that was how the debate went. Like that would be great. That would maybe be my strategy in debating against her.
Yeah.
Is like you're standing next to her on the debate stage. She's like $50 an hour minimum wage. I'm like 100. I hold up the auction card.
You know what they say then? You're just being ridiculous. Well, no, you're ridiculous. Okay, this is also ridiculous. The Chicago School Board voted unanimously to remove armed resource officers from the schools, and the kids, they were all in favor of this. They were all pushing for this. There was one alderman who said, wait a minute, this might be dangerous for the schools. The voice of reason, right? What do you think about this?
It's dumb. I mean,
you know, when I moved to Blue Springs, I was told back then, this was 1995, from some folks on Prodigy, in a Prodigy chat room, which probably goes back before your time, but that was an early internet thing. Prodigy chat rooms. And a guy said, if you're moving to Kansas City, you want to put your kids in a school district that starts with Blue, either Blue Valley or Blue Springs.
Right.
And we chose Blue Springs. Blue Springs is the only school district in the state of Missouri that has its own police department. Did you know that?
I did not.
So they don't use Blue Springs police officers. They have their own police that are in there. Okay. So this story is from today. This is from Olathe Northwest High School here in the Kansas City area. All right. A child, a juvenile, let's say 16-year-old, accused of bringing a loaded gun to school and assaulting a school resource officer. Brought a loaded gun to school and assaulted a school resource officer. Well, in Chicago, that's not going to be a problem anymore because they won't have resource officers.
Yeah, they'll just run around with a gun and do whatever they want with it, I guess.
And keep shooting each other.
Yeah, and you can go check that article that I had up on screen because the students were advocating for getting rid of the resource officers.
Get rid of that guy.
Well, we need to address the root causes of the inequity and blah, 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 and systemic this and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, they're just going to eliminate the actual solution for the problem, which is to have people there to protect the kids. and they're just going to try and what? I mean, you bring in social workers. Is that what you're going to do? There's somebody brings a gun to school. There's a knife fight in the hallway. You're going to bring a social worker in.
Yeah. Another gun law.
Yeah.
That's what we need. I'm telling you. And our, it's like, what's your solution, Mr. Smart Guy? Well, why don't we put criminals behind bars? I mean, I think that works better than another meaningless gun law that you won't enforce anyway, right?
That sounds like a plan.
All right. Next week, we talk about moving the K to the crossroads. Maybe they should rename that the crosshairs, because that seems to be what happens down there. We'll talk to Becky Nace next week about that. Please subscribe, spread the word. And again, talk to your friends, encourage them, go with fact-based things, and challenge them on the reasons that they're voting for Joe Biden. Let's get less tribal and more fact-based. I like that. Let's go with that. Until next week, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.